Here in the heartland of Europe, wildlife is flourishing, and nowhere more than in the League of Legends European Championship. In this veritable paradise, we can see nature as it is, unfiltered and real. Here we see the impressive skills of XL Esports. Mimicking the movements of the jungler from SK, they have become completely invisible, almost as if they never showed up in the first place. One of the newest additions to the LEC ecosystem is Destiny. He can be seen here avoiding a natural predator. What's that? Has this koala ever even been to Worlds?
I'm gone.
A gruesome reminder of nature's fury and a tough day for Nemesis, caught amongst the mad lions. How did he end up here? Was he trying to die? The wilds leave many unanswered questions. A rare look into Schalke's 10-man roster and how they decide which players to start each week. Whoops, there goes Inax. Oh, whoopsie daisy, and there goes Nukes as well. Well, one thing is astonishingly clear. Their biggest opponent may just be themselves. Finally, we get a glance at the king of this jungle. Their motives remain unclear, but one thing is for sure. If we could understand what goes on in the mind of this majestic beast, perhaps we could understand what it takes to win the LEC.
Welcome to the LEC studio. Week 3 has arrived and an incredible set of games are awaiting us. Who are the true top teams? We'll find out today and tomorrow. I'm Quickshot, joined by Ender and Medic Attenborough, who's back from his safari.
Trevor, I'm back from my safari.
Is that your voice when you do this?
It's just my natural voice. I'll have you know. Today we'll explore the mysteries of the LEC with this tall giraffe who I have.
Well, there we go. The giraffe and I are going to take a look at the Week 2 standings as we've come into summer. Some teams are already taking a huge step towards playoffs. For others, however, it is important to start picking up wins and fast. Mad Lions and Rogue tied for first above Fnatic, G2, OG. It's mind-boggling.
I mean, it's got to be a big surprise for people, especially the way these two teams came in so, like, right out of the gates. They were successful. Rogue have been coming in and looking so clean in their matchups, and you can say what you will about their strength of schedule thus far, but in their wins, they have looked completely dominant.
But I will say what I can about their strength of schedule so far, because they've yet to play Fnatic, they've yet to play Origin, they've yet to play the Mad Lions, and they lost to G2 last week. So as much as I have respect for the way Rogue are playing right now, unless they end this weekend with a couple of wins, I don't think they're one of my top spot contenders.
But I will say Mad Lions still very much in my mind as a top spot contender. You can see in this game against Fnatic. Oh, poor Nemesis gets absolutely destroyed.
By the Mad Lions.
Oh my, this has to.
I love the fact that the Volibear is teleported in using Destiny. The fact that they added the TF Ultimate was insane. Look, I'm really excited about Mad Lions. I feel like fans are supporting them as well. I want to take a little bit of a deeper dive, though, on some of the individual players that have helped these teams stand up. Let's talk about some studs and some duds from the opening 2 weeks. Medic, straight to you first.
So I think my biggest stud so far has to be Crownshot. I think he's had an incredible performance so far on SK, and what's really happened is that the team has developed around him to a place where he can shine. He's always been a good AD carry, but when you look at him this split, the team is investing resources into him early, giving him early gold, giving him early plates, and it means that even when they lose in games like this against against Excel, he is still the linchpin and trying to carry some of these later game fights.
And it's so fun to see him sort of step into his own now, because for a long time we've known he's a good player, because when he's on something like Ezreal where he doesn't have to rely on all the pieces around him, he can pop off in games, even when SK was struggling in the past. But this split, he's been getting his hands on some other champions, has the team around him, and still looking so phenomenal in these fights.
Well, Crownie definitely is stepping up. I agree, stud. I do have a studlier stud, though. It's going to be Humanoid. Let me just throw some stats at you. He is first amongst mid laners in XP difference, gold difference, damage per minute difference, damage percent. He has the lowest death percentage for mid laners. That's right. Humanoid has the lowest death percentage for mid laners, and he's currently second for kills plus assists and kill participation at 15. Statistically speaking, he is the best mid laner right now.
Okay, stats can speak for themselves. I will say this guy has been popping off, right? Like, he's been drawing some Orianna bans. I'm not going to call him the best mid laner. You can have your stats, though. That's sort of your thing. They do look good. I'm not going to lie. He's pulling Orianna bans. You saw that Syndra game just from last weekend's Vitality, where he's tearing people apart. And the funny thing is, he still plays so aggressive, and he's still, like, he gets so far ahead, he buys the Medjais, and he's getting picked on in that game there on the Syndra and stuff. But at the end of the day, this guy has looked so good in and out of lane.
I totally agree with you, and I think we're starting to see the Humanoid that was promised realized. So, like, when he came in with Abadage and Nemesis, he was meant to be one of these new great EU mids, and we didn't really see it enough last year for me to have that trust. But now, he is the best of those three by a long shot, in my opinion. Much better than Abadage, and definitely better than Nemesis right now.
It has to feel like a little bit like those EU mids.
Yep.
Like, it is starting to show some promise. I know it's a meme. Don't turn your nose up at me. But he is growing.
It's been like 5 years, Trevor. Let's calm down.
Well, listen, I am an old man, and I'm not going to forget it. We've had two studs. Ender, you're on the spot. Give me a dud.
Nemesis! What?
Fair. Okay, that was a little easy.
Like, what's going on here? Honestly, like, it's just a little bit mind-boggling, because you say, like, Nemesis was better than Humanoid in 2019.
Yep.
He was absolutely phenomenal. Even last split, he was still looking pretty good in the majority of his games, but everyone's looking at his Twisted Fate performances, where he's ulting into, you know, the backlines getting instantly blown up. I say, like, yes, that's a problem, but a bigger problem for me is actually the recurring problem I see when he plays melee mid laners. We saw it in his Echo performance just last weekend, when he's not actually looking to come in on flanks and, you know, disrupt the enemy backline. He's always fighting front to back, and it's these problems within team fights that I think Nemesis really needs to figure out if he's going to be a multi-pronged threat, because for a long time, it's just been the Cassiopeia, the Twisted Fate, the Corkis, the DPS backline mids, and now that those aren't always working out, that's trouble.
And I think we have talked about Nemesis's champion pool being a major point of concern for this team for a long time, and we're starting to see it realize more and more now when these other players are stepping up on things like the Orianna, on things like the Azir, and they're really making themselves known in the current meta.
Yeah, we'll have to see what Nemesis can do, some important games ahead, and whether he and Fnatic can bounce back, because tomorrow they take on their arch rivals G2 for an epic Alienware match of the week.
Oh, Reckless dodged the petrifying gaze from Perch!
G2 are destroying.
He manages to take down Perch!
Fnatic are popping up, and G2 don't stand a chance!
And G2 finds 3.
The Jankos no ult, remember, he can't get out of this.
G2, the perfect team fight.
Slides his way in and flashes forward with bow.
And it's Fnatic who are coming out on top.
There's a Monsoon, something's gonna go down.
Oh no, Reckless jumped away from him. The Jankos will be shut down. Here comes the charge in from the side, and G2 can do nothing about it.
Low here as well. Caps might look for that true shot barrage. Jankos gonna jump into the pit. He goes unstoppable. He steals it.
Get Baron! It's secured by G2!
G2 are inevitable. G2 are inescapable. Matching the record set by Fnatic. 7 titles for G2.
I think mostly it's in our own heads, and that's something we have to figure out, obviously, because the goal here is to be G2 and to get the trophy back.
Even right now, winning LEC is not like something big. It's more about beating G2. And then comes the most important thing, which is winning Worlds, right, and becoming the world champion.
Like right now, we're just playing our own game, where we have to keep staying ahead of everyone else. That's always harder than it is to catch up to someone.
Fnatic has always had problems with drafts in that sense of like being stubborn on picking up champions, and they're probably forcing themselves to pick up new champions to be ready for whichever meta that will be.
Regardless of what we would have played on that day, we would have still lost 0-3, so it just felt like they had a better strat there, basically.
When you make it all the way to the LEC finals, that's like one of those high points in your climb. You're going to drop down at the end of the start of summer anyway, right? You're going to have to start where everybody else starts. Just because you lost the finals doesn't mean that you can't climb back up.
Fnatic is a team that we need in Europe because we need to be challenged in every play if we want to compete against LPL, because they play really aggressive as well.
There is no better rivalry right now in League of Legends, because you look over LCK, your SKT and your KTs are not at the top. EDG and RNG, they're not at the top. CLG and TSM, they're definitely not at the top.
就说明他们整个战队的风格和就是打法，然后每个人的水平是保持了非常好的意思，所以我其实很看好他们在世界赛的表现。
일단은 두 팀 경기하는 게 일단 경기가 좀 재밌고 그리고 또 라이벌 관계다 보니까 이 두 가지 이유가 그냥 제일 큰 것 같아요. 사람들이 많이 열광하는 것 같아요.
I'm really excited to see which one of the two is actually gonna put the other one into the dirt.
So the fact that Europe has G2 and Fnatic, and then how competitive they have been also on a global scale, that's what makes this the best rivalry in League of Legends right now.
There's no doubt in my mind that this is the single greatest rivalry in League of Legends worldwide. FLICKR said it best. There are no teams in any other region that have consistently stood the test of time. The most impressive thing to me, though, is the once former rulers of Europe, Fnatic, have been chasing G2 since they made it to this stage. G2 have been the undisputed best team that Europe has ever produced. And frankly, it's about time for Fnatic to champion the cause, to try to take them down. Gentlemen, it is a rematch of the Spring Finals. It is the first time that we are seeing G2 take on Fnatic. Tomorrow, Game 5, everybody should be there. I mean, it has everything you want.
I mean, G2 Fnatic will never disappoint you, ever. You're going to show up and you're going to have a great game. Like, even the regular season games, I still remember casting last spring, the
Week
base
9,
race.
Day 1,
yeah, it's just the best of one, right? It doesn't really mean anything. They both qualified for playoffs, but they played and they played their hearts out. I was on the floor by the end of that cast with that insanity at the end.
Like, all of my greatest memories from casting have been Fnatic G2 games. I remember Athens last year when it was just so back and forth, losing my voice in the second game of the series and then having 3 more left to go. Like, these two teams will never go into a match like this half-heartedly. The entire idea behind Fnatic versus G2 is to pummel the enemy team into the dirt so much that they wait until finals before they can ever get anything back.
The thing that I find amazing is the players themselves talk about it. In that video, Perks just said, when you're the lead, when you're the #1 team, you have to constantly innovate. That's way more pressure than somebody chasing. Fnatic's been chasing for a long time. There's been 1 year in G2's history here at the top of the table where Fnatic was objectively the better team. But outside of that, Fnatic have played second fiddle to G2, and they hate it.
Yeah.
They hate it. So what do they have to do different? Like, how do they have to improve?
I mean, they innovate, right? And they have been innovating. And I look at Fnatic and G2, they both have very distinct playstyles, especially looking at last week. But I want to zoom out even further because I think it's so interesting right now that in Europe, our top 4 teams have all come into the split with completely different approaches to League of Legends, completely different styles, and it starts in the draft. I want to take a look at Fnatic first of all, because their games last week, like, yes, they went 0-2, but this was not, you know, the let's just late game teamfight play around bot lane. This was reckless on Soraka, and the entire comp was built around Selfmade. It was better jungle wins, and everything was about funneling resources into him. So basically, the concept behind this is you put Selfmade on the Graves. You want him to be power farming through his jungle, and then come mid-game, you're then going to say Soraka, who's our quote-unquote ADC, she doesn't need to farm anymore. Now Graves can can farm the lanes. What this meant for Selfmade is that he's 4 levels up on his opposing jungle. He's multiple thousands of gold full items over his opponents, and that is such a unique way of approaching the game that I love to see those types of new styles.
I really enjoyed it, and I talked to Bwippo about it a little bit yesterday, and he was saying, why shouldn't we innovate? Like, a lot of people came at them and said, hey, you went 0-2, are you going to play this style again? I would love to see them play this style again.
Yeah, they should have won those games.
All it does is show me that they continue to learn, they continue to grow, and Fnatic have been a team in the past that have been too stuck in their ways. Now, another team that is changing the way that drafting is done, or sticking to their usual drafting style, is G2. And I want to talk a little bit about them, because their entire drafting style is based around having Caps out of the lane. He spends 51.6% of the first 15 minutes of the game in mid lane. The rest of the time is in everywhere else on the map.
That is insane.
This guy spends a full minute and 14 seconds more than any other mid laner roaming around in the early game. And what G2 have done is they have unlocked him to then get into the side lanes and get his other players ahead. And they've done this so consistently and so well that it means it's actually very hard to shut down G2 because they can be anywhere on the map with a numbers advantage.
You basically have to attack Caps, otherwise
he's
going to attack you. Exactly.
Otherwise
he's going to attack you, and that's where it just becomes so interesting, because you basically have a Fnatic that's playing with 1 super buff jungler. You have G2 that are playing with effectively 2 junglers, and then you have Mad Lions that is throwing everything out the window. And while everyone else is like, ah, yes, the meta, we're going to take the late game team fights with these ranged backliners, Mad Lions are like, let's take 5 champions that want to dive on your face and ruin you. They are the anti-meta team. They want to disrupt the norm, and they do this with stuff like Senna Wukong in the bottom lane, with Hecarim up in the top lane paired with the Yuumi. It's this freshness and this willingness to innovate and go completely the opposite direction to everyone else that has allowed them to come out with such fire under them.
And what I've loved about this is, in Spring Split, when we talked about Mad Lions, we said they have their single playstyle. They have this one thing they do, they leave a Rome in the top lane, he's weak side, and then they play through the bottom side of the map. What we're seeing more from them now is not always a Rome being on a carry, like he's not going to carry every single game, but they are more willing to open up the map and play these different styles. And that adaptation gives me so much hope for this team coming into Worlds, coming into playoffs, because that's what you want to see from one of the best teams in Europe.
I absolutely love it. The thing is, we've got 3 different styles of drafting, styles of playing the game. The obvious one that I can see, Rogue are still playing the scaling team fights, right? They are still going the tried and true, the week 1 meta that we were anticipating. I mean, Medic, can we add on to that, or is it just as simple as?
I want to stress, this isn't a bad style to have, right? This is the style we kind of all expected people to be drafting. AD carry that scales up, mid laner that's strong in team fights, a couple of tanks, and then you work your way around vision, which is what Rogue do really well, and front to back in team fights. It is a very strong style. It's just not a huge surprise from teams like Rogue or Origin.
I have a question for you, Ender, because I know you were particularly fired up looking at the drafting decision-making and the way these top teams are playing. Do you expect one of them to take the lead? Do you expect the teams to continue exploring the diversity?
So I think that's such an interesting question, because it's not that one is necessarily better than the other. What it is a game of rock, paper, scissors. Because you look at things, right, where, like, let's just take Mad Lions versus Rogue as an example. Rogue go for the standard, right? You take the backliners that need protection. If Mad Lions rock up with all this heavy dive, they're going to destroy that. The backline isn't going to be able to withstand that onslaught of a Wukong and a Hecarim jumping on top of you. But if Rogue then look over at Fnatic and say, oh, you're building your entire comp around this very low-range Graves, well, if we have Orianna and Ezreal that can just outrange him, we've already seen that be a very good formula to beating down that Fnatic plan.
I absolutely love this. I absolutely love this. Look, we're going to keep discussing the top teams, their play styles throughout the week. Ender and I in particular are going to dive into that today. We got some epically spicy matchups today. Let's take a look at the schedule. We're going to kick it off with XL taking on, I can't see the screen. Schalke, thank you. I should know that, but I don't. But I mean, some of the games that I want to look at later today, Mad versus Origin is going to be a huge one.
I'm really excited for Mad versus Origin. I think this is the redemption arc kind of for Origin. They never got the chance to face Mad Lions in playoffs last split, and now they get to show that they were better and they should have been at least 3rd place last split. And it's also, if Origin beat Mad, they have beaten G2, Fnatic, and Mad Lions, and they are de facto the best team in the league right now.
Oh, I can't wait to see what happens. Of course, the game that ends the schedule today is going to be Fnatic taking on Rogue. Hans Summer versus Reckless. That's a no-brainer. I don't need to explain it to you. You might be wondering, where is Ender?
I can pretend to be him.
In terms of champions, bear with me, as there's a grizzly beast that's been running wild around the Rift. Ender is here to explain the bare necessities.
I'm so sorry. And honestly, I have to say that I stand against bear puns and we shouldn't do them ever again. And I apologize in advance. If you ever see me stumble, it's because Vedius originally wrote this script and I have to edit out a lot of those lines. Anyways, Volibear is a very strong flex pick that is rising in popularity at the current moment after receiving some pretty substantial buffs on patch 10.12. We saw his win rate skyrocket both in top lane and jungle, and you can flex him around between those two pretty interchangeably. I will say that his jungle win rate looking a little bit higher, even though it debuted in the top lane here in the LEC. As you can see, he is so strong in the early game as a duelist. This means he can take very nice trades in lane. You can see when Dan tries to walk up for a minion, that's when Gen X is going to preempt it by dropping down that long range E to be able to walk in, pick up a shield, and lay down the damage. This sets up for very easy to execute and very powerful trades within lane. So weak fighters are going to struggle whenever they try to walk up and get CS. There's also AoE built into his kit, so you got to worry about that. He's always going to have the minion advantage against you. Now, moving on into the jungle, because of the AoE on his passive, as well as the shield he gets and the healing he gets via his W, Volibear has a fast and also a very healthy clear. On top of that, his early game skirmishes still going to be strong, very similar as top lane. His fighting is just good because he's a juggernaut and he's built to take those 1v1s. Now, his one weakness in the jungle, or his big one rather, is that his ganking isn't really the greatest, right? He just sort of runs at you and then gets slowed down or you walk away, but that can be remedied by going for a chilling smite, and then you can just zoom right on top of them and they're not going to get out of that one too easily. Now, while I do expect Volibear to continue becoming more popular in pro play, he has other weaknesses on top of that that we need to address. I already said it. He's a juggernaut. His weakness is going to be target access and getting kited. He has long cooldowns too. You know, the movement when he's trying to run onto you with his Q, it doesn't actually scale down with levels, meaning that even at max rank, it is 15 seconds long before CDR. So if you're able to get away with them without allowing him to reset that, that's going to be very good for you. Now, it is worth noting that he can rectify these problems of target access with rune choice, right? You get so much movement speed in runes now with Phase Rush, Nimbus Cloak, Celerity, Water Walking, all of this. So expect to see that popping up a whole lot. Now, for top lane Volibear in particular, Trinity Force is going to be the name of the game. You want to go for that as your first item. Very strong for fighting. You can proc Sheen super easily. You get a little bit of extra movement speed as well. You can move on to a Spirit Visage to buff up your healing, and a Dead Man's Plate too. I've seen some top laners going for Press the Attack. I've also seen Press the Attack in the jungle. I still say go Phase Rush. Move speed is your problem, so remove the problem by getting the move speed, and you are going to be looking A-okay in the jungle on that Volibear. Anyways, that's all I got for the bear. Please, I know, Trevor, I know one or two or three are coming.
I'm not going to do puns.
Don't do it.
Dude, I have stats. I have stats.
I think it was a polarizing discussion that we've been having, right?
No, it really was. Yeah. And look, I've got stats for you. It's been banned 4 times. It's been played once. It was a win medic. Do you think we're going to see more Volibear?
I think so. I think after watching Gen X on SK dominate on it, he went 9-1, I believe, in their game. I expect to see more Volibear. I think it is really strong in the current meta, especially into some of the top laners we're seeing. And so you can have lane control, you can have lane prio with the passive, and being able to get control over that entire topside river is just really strong.
Oh, I'm really hoping that we do get to see more of him, mostly just like on the screen behind us. Look, we're about to get into our pre-match, and as polarizing as the beast in the top lane is, this unbearable beast can maybe bring some life to Schalke 04, who are still looking for their first win. Let's check in with Dylan Falco, who we spoke to earlier today.
Thank you and welcome to the Live Like a Pro interview today with Dylan Falco from Schalke 04 ahead of their game versus XL Esports. Thank you, Dylan, for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you.
You guys with Schalke were one of the teams who had to rebuild and decided to rebuild after spring. And you decided to go with something a bit unconventional in Europe at least, which is the 10-man roster. So can you explain this decision and what led you to go this way?
So obviously we had a pretty disappointing spring split overall, although I think near the end of spring split we ended quite strong. I think at Schalke, a big focus for this year is player development and integrating our academy team and our main team roster together. I think we were also one of the only teams that has an academy roster that is quite strong and actually can challenge in multiple positions for our main team spots. So because our performance wasn't that great and because it's kind of a vision of the club to really integrate young players and train them, yeah, we decided to do a split and summer split where we would be making substitutions between the two teams.
It's a super interesting approach, especially when you have to work with the IRL team and the LEC team. But to me, it's also a different approach when it comes to coaching, because these 10 players, they know that they won't always be sitting in the LEC seat. So to me, it comes with managing expectations, also personalities of the players. So tell me about the challenges you face when it comes to adapting with these 10 players.
So I think one of the positives we definitely have, despite things going poorly, we have a very good attitude throughout the office, throughout our players and both rosters. So I think everybody is kind of in it together to achieve the same goal. So far, actually, it hasn't been too difficult from a managing expectations and coaching standpoint.
All right. Well, that's good to hear. And one thing that you also mentioned, and I want to have a bit more information about this, you changed the roster for the past 3 weeks now. And I'm just wondering, given the results you had and what you aim for, how do you know where to identify the mistakes and where to make adjustments every week?
So we spend a lot of time doing analysis of our practice and our stage games, talking with our players, talking with other staff members. We have our analyst, for example, that works on this, to try and figure out what the issues are, why we were losing, etc. So we can try and fix this. For example, a big change for the bot lane was just we had a lot of data that our laning phase was a bit weak in bot lane, although the scrim results were quite good. So this was something we tried to improve for weeks 2 and now this week.
All right. And well, I mean, depending on the opposition, you may have some tricks up your sleeves. And I hope you found the recipe for this week. Thank you very much, Dylan, for the interview.
Yeah, thank you.
And back to you, Trevor.
Thank you so much, Laura. That was a fantastic interview. And today, Schalke's best chance so far of picking up a win, because they are facing off against a team right ahead of them in the standings. That doesn't say much, as both these teams are at the bottom of the standings, right? Look, let's turn our attention to Exile very quickly. We've heard a lot from Dylan, and I do want to talk about Schalke's expectations. But it was Exile that picked up a win last weekend over SK. It was with the help of Patrick on the Aphelios. I mean, Ender, it was an exciting game, and it was desperately needed for Exile.
No, Exile absolutely needed the win. I think they came in with the right approach, going for a pretty easy to execute team fight sort of style within their draft. But Patrick was the man of the hour. You know, fantastic performance out of him on this Aphelios. Even when things started getting a little bit hairy, because this was not the cleanest overall win, you can see just the ridiculous damage he's able to output on the champion. Also, the aggression, too. You like to see, even when your team's not doing all that well, Patrick says, I need to take matters in my own hands. He goes right on in.
So I was rewatching this video, and I think what XL did well was draft a team that just plays well with their players, right? They had Cries on something he was comfortable on in the top lane. They had Special, who made a few mistakes but could just teamfight later on the Azir. And then you had the best player on the team, Patrick, able to carry in the late game. And I think if XL can keep doing this against teams that they should be beating or that are near them, like a Schalke, that's where I think XL's strength lies, because I do not trust them to bring out something new and be able to beat a team like Schalke.
That is fair. I mean, we just saw the team huddle there from the Exile house. They do have themselves one win under their belt. Let's turn our attention to Schalke. They play Exile today. They play Origin tomorrow. So still difficult game, especially with tomorrow's consideration. I mean, talking about the 10-man roster, Medic Attenborough had a little bit of a joke around it. I know we discussed quite extensively what a 10-man roster means, the pros and the cons. I don't believe we've really seen it utilized to fantastic effect really anywhere, right? But I do like the fact they are trying something, because right now they haven't found a recipe that's succeeding.
But I think the question is, do you have to try something every week, right? Because we had week 1 with Inax and with Nukes. We had week 2 where then Neon and Dreams came in. We're now in week 3 and it's Neon and Dreams again. How long do you give these guys? Because a 10-man roster, if you're switching it week in, week out, I don't actually think you can expect to see a team find synergy and find strength there. I'd much prefer they say, we're going to stick with the same 5 players for the entirety of the split.
I'm 100% in agreement there. I think 10-man roster is a myth. So in the interview, you hear Dylan Falco say they're focusing on talent development. I think if your focus is talent development, sure, sub people in and out, you're going to help them build up and like have a longer career path, potentially like see where there is potential there. But at the end of the day, if you're constantly, readjusting pieces and you're still a 10th place team, it's not going to get better. Sure, maybe you find like the one thing that magically works, but then you're Schalke in the spring split and it's 4 weeks too late.
It's interesting as well because Mad Lions approach to talent development in a slightly different way, committing to the same roster and letting them as a group develop. We saw Schalke at the end of spring kind of show up.
That's because their roster is freaking good, Trevor.
Let's see what's going to happen. I need a prediction from you two before we head off. Who will win, Schalke or XL?
XL.
It's very convincing.
XL Esports, la 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 la.
That's it, XL Esports, la 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 la. It is time to see which surprises this week will bring our way as we head over to the casters for Game 1.